So, hi, everybody. My name is Craig DeWitt. I am the co founder of Skyfire. Happy to talk today with David and Ankit. David, would you give a brief intro?
Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is David Senecal. I work for Akamai Technologies, and I build building bot management solution for probably 15 years now. And yeah, looking forward to this conversation.
Hey everybody, my name is Ankit Agarwal. Really happy to be here with David and Craig. I head technology and engineering at Skyfire and very excited to be enabling agentic commerce.
So, one of the things that we hear at Skyfire with the customers we work with is it's very difficult for agents to be able to access websites to complete any kind of checkout experience or any kind of activity. Folks like Akamai make it really difficult for those agents to be able to access the sites today. So, David, now that agents or bots are not just all bad, they can actually be customers. How is thinking evolving in the security space around letting some in while saying no to others?
Yeah, I mean, that's always been a bit of a challenge for us in the bot management space where there's always been this concept of good bot, bad bots. And now it's kind of extending now with the agent era where technically it's automation. So technically this is bot activity, but this is kind of like, a different type of legitimate clients that now we need to be able to recognize and be able to treat, give like the premium treatment in that case. So our detection on the bot management side needs to evolve to be able to recognize this new type of clients so that we can handle them as they should be.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem there, at least from what we see, is that a good bot with intent to actually purchase from a website versus a bot that is either just coming in to scrape or even do something nefarious is today they look like the same kind of programmatic access.
Yeah, absolutely. And the challenge to some extent is because we have a lot of people creating agents to kind of automate this shopping experience, but to some extent, they don't really know how to introduce themselves, to identify themselves. And for us, our bot detection technology is designed to, at the end, detect anomalous behavior or anomalous signature, things that don't look like a browser or an app that we are used to see in our customers' traffic. So things that looks out of the ordinary, like an agent that may have a different signature, maybe based on some headless browser technology, then for us it's like bot technology, and therefore we're going to flag them as bot. So thanks to new protocols like KYA, for example, that potentially give us the opportunity to really recognize and clearly identify those agents and be able to then categorize them properly and then give that visibility to our customers so that they can decide how they want to handle that traffic.
Yeah, I think just exactly like David is saying, right? Like the internet was designed for humans and merchants want human customers to buy stuff while at the same time, not allowing scraping for prices or not allowing scalpers to buy, 100 pairs of shoes to resell later. And I think, like to David's point, like that's where KYA comes in, is to showcase that intent. And I think that's one way to really distinguish between a bot and an agent, even though the technology underlying both is kind of similar, except with an agent, maybe there's an LLM for a brain, and a bot is more just deterministic scraping. But yeah, I think that's the idea behind a protocol like KYA, is to kind of get that intent across that this is acting on behalf of a human and there is an intent to buy or consume the content just like the publisher or the e-commerce site intended for it to be.
Yeah. Actually, to kind of add to this, like, in the bot management space, we always had that problem where, in the past, we're not talking about agents who are trying to do a transaction, legitimate transaction, but there was always some kind of like automated application, a bot kind of designed to do something. Now we call them agent, but at the end of the day, it's kind of similar technology. It's just more formalized now. And in the past, always been a trouble for us to identify those sort of things. And then, going to an argument with some of our customers, like, what this particular session is a purchasing thing. So for us, it's legitimate. But for us, it's like, wow, we're detecting bots. We don't detect intent. and we don't detect, we don't have visibility whether the intent will be to buy a particular product and generate revenue for us. So now at least that brings us more this awareness, kind of like bring a bit more sanity into this whole thing so that we can do a better job moving forward.
A lot of the folks that we work with come in and they are confused about a lot of the words that are being used today. So they hear about KYA, they hear about identity, they hear about intent, they hear about mandates. So if we could simplify this to somebody who's maybe on the merchant side or even the agent side of what really matters in being able to freely access the web as an agent and complete a checkout, how do you separate intent or mandate from identity?
So the concept of intent, I think it's kind of a bit newer. I mean, you've heard it we've heard it in the industry, the bot management industry for a while, but concretely, we have not really done much around it to kind of be able to detect intent. Sometimes it's pretty easy in some cases where we are looking for fraud scenarios like, credential stuffing or account takeover or fake account creation on, login or account creation endpoint, that then the intent is clear there. If you see like somebody hammering and doing some weird stuff, the intent is fraud. But then when you're looking at an agent or bot browsing the site, by default, at least up until this year, I feel, by default, we've always thought of bots that potentially go after product pages, category pages, and sort of things as scrapers. So they were definitely by default categorized as scrapers. But it's a lot more nuanced than that. There's like, scrapers for commercial, commercial usage, meaning that competitive analysis and this sort of things. But there's also some scraping activity for it's kind of doing some market research, general market research, or for also for public safety sometime, or for some like research from university who want to researcher in university who want to collect data to kind of use for their research. So there's a lot more nuance than that, and then we need to be able to recognize all of this. And that goes deeper into this whole agentic commerce now, because at the end, all of that is bot activity, and then the intent here is, now I want to buy a product, and I'm a user, I want to buy the product. I just can't be bothered to go to the website. I just want to automate that experience because I don't have time, and you can just ask an AI agent to do it for you. So
Yeah.
things needs to change.
Absolutely. And Ankit, I think David's laid out the challenges on the security side of being able to identify who the agent is, who they're representing, collecting a mandate or an intent to understand what that agent is going to do on the site for an actual checkout. But how can you also allow a 10x better shopping experience for the end user without introducing a bunch of friction to be able to overcome those security hurdles to be able to complete a transaction?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly where KYA comes in, right? So with merchants, again, going back to the internet was designed for humans, and when humans navigate the websites, and going back to what David said about browsing, right, which is they just kind of looking around, trying to figure out what looks good to them, what they might be interested in. The merchants use that into that browsing behavior to like make decisions about what kinds of offers to kind of at runtime kind of showcase to the user, and things, right? And so that's kind of intent. Like, to be honest, like intent was always a little gray, even for humans. That's window shopping. You're just shopping. You may not even know that you have intent to purchase at that point, right? Like you get enticed with all the offers and things like that. And kind of like that's kind of the experience that you want for your agent as well, where your agent identifies itself and now the merchant can start to learn from that behavior and then also surface things that you might be interested in, because it knows your browsing history and stuff. So I think that's where it starts to become much more natural, right? Like in terms of like, okay, the agent is going to behave the way I behave. And because of the KYA token, I can make that explicit to the site that it is for a human versus like someone, like a bot just kind of scraping prices or caching data to resell or something like that. And so I think like just having that identity kind of helps crystallize that there is intent.
Awesome. So let's move over to what agentic commerce actually is. We've had a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people, and they hear about ACP and A2A and OCA, and alphabet soup of these protocols, which I would say are primarily API based ways of interfacing with merchants. Let's walk through like what is an actual agentic shopping flow today, Ankit, where are we actually seeing the flows today for how agents are shopping, and where does KYA fit in?
Yeah, so like what we're seeing, e-commerce, of course, like front and center, right? Like that's the big one where we see a lot of flows where people are using chatbots, people are using purpose-built agents, and they're using those to discover products, to shop, to complete purchases. We also see news readers and like I'll just say like information aggregators, things like that, where people are researching topics or trending topics, things like that, and they're using these chatbots to kind of aggregate data, kind of back to kind of like David's point about research, where it's not like an academic research, but more humans just kind of doing day-to-day kind of searching for information. And again, all of these, become important to be identified as human traffic because we call it agentic traffic, but it's really just an extension of human traffic, which is what the merchants and the publishers want. Yeah, so I think those are two big early ones, but David,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
probably see a lot more.
think there's definitely a lot of it. I recognize the alphabet soup myself, and working even because we're working on it day in day out, it can be confusing for us as well because it seems that this year there's been new protocols announced every month or every other week, something like this. So I think there's some confusion. It brings some confusion on the market because like which one is relevant, which one should I pay attention, and there's a lot of overlap into all these different protocols that have been proposed. So for some of them, it's potentially complex for website owners to implement because now they have to potentially invest in some infrastructure or some software development to be able to kind of facilitate all that communication and optimize for the agents. So a lot of the questions that I'm getting from customers is like, what should I do and what matters? What should we pay attention to and what should we do really? So, and sometimes we don't really have the good answers because we ourselves kind of seeing how the market is evolving, how the technology is evolving, and what's getting traction in terms of adoption. So it's not always an easy answer. Things evolve very rapidly. Like MCP was a thing. It's been a thing, and then recent announcement indicates that, well, maybe MCP, maybe not be that big of a deal after all in the future. So yeah, it can be confusing for the market for sure.
So to demystify what we're seeing on the agentic commerce side is you have this explosion of protocols that are interesting that we've touched in some capacity or integrated with. The vast majority of traffic we see today and e-commerce flows are happening via the website. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that today, it is very difficult to compete with the ubiquity of checkout experiences that are available for merchants just online today. And so the primary flows that we see and that we power is one where a user has some chat interface. They use this for product discovery. They use this to get reviews and an idea of what product they want to buy. And then within that interface, they're able to now click a buy now button. And that kicks off a process that the user doesn't necessarily see, but ultimately an agent goes out and purchases on their behalf. What's happening behind the scenes is a headless browser is spun up, navigates to the website, just like a normal human being, finds the right product using a cursor, clicks on the right product to create an account, checks out, and then plugs a credit card into that checkout UI and clicks buy. And so you can imagine if you're in David's seat, a lot of that behavior is tough to determine. Is this actually acting on behalf of a user, or is this some kind of like penetration testing or someone the agent doesn't actually want in? So Ankit, like where does KYA sit in a checkout flow like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question because one of the the kind of like a big, I guess the most important foundational principle for KYA has always been that we need to enable agentic commerce today, right? Because if this revolution of agentic commerce and agentic everything is going to happen, it needs to happen today. We see a lot of solutions out there which are like, oh, we're agent ready. Oh, but where are the agents? And so, that's kind of like this alphabet soup of protocols. Like, I think they're definitely a move in the right direction, but they are something for tomorrow. And going back to like merchants, they are confused and they don't want to make too much of an investment before they know that this is really going to go somewhere, right? And so this is where KYA fits in. Like a lot of the protocols you see today, they're really frameworks. There's a lot going on there. What we did is we pulled out KYA and payments as like two foundational layers that all of these frameworks have. MCP, APA, OAC, ACK, all of these things, they have these frameworks. They have these underlying need for identity and payments. And we really pulled that out and made it kind of stand on its own so that then with standard technology like JOTs or JWTs, you can use KYA tokens today for web access or API access. That extends to MCP because with MCP, you can also use these tokens inside your requests and responses. And it kind of gets you agent ready today with your existing infrastructure, but it also prepares you for tomorrow, whether it's MCP or A2A or some new thing, you're ready because the underlying concepts for identity and verification and secure payment credentials remains the same. So yeah, that's kind of where we started from, and we're continue to build towards supporting all forms of protocols and frameworks.
Yeah, I would add to that as a vendor, art management vendor, was to be able to support all this kind of agentic revolution. What I like about KYA is how versatile it can be because, yeah, I mean, it's useful for when we talk about agentic commerce, but also it can be useful for the use case where simply you want, let's say in the case of a publisher, for example, you want to be able to, publishers, they don't really have much to sell other than the information, the articles they publish. And what they want is they want to know who behind the agents is actually consulting or what is using the information to get answer to their questions. So providing that, that transparency end to end that you would normally have if the user connect directly to the website, I think is important just to make sure that, everybody can get what they need from the whole interaction. And we don't then see the knee-jerk reaction sometimes that we see with our customers, which is like, hey, AI agents are stealing my data. I don't want it. Block it. And I think at the end, agentic and all these sort of things is, there's definitely a buzz around it and some question whether it's going to be a thing. In the future, I personally don't see it going away. It's kind of here to stay. So at the end, we have to find the right way. Industry will have to find the right way to adapt to it. But everybody needs to kind of maybe transform a bit on how they do their things to make sure they can continue to survive as a business, right? So I think YA kind of like is the center of that because it really enables a lot of things, like providing the transparency and payment as needed and monetization of that content if as needed as a one-off or as a license agreement or sort of thing. So it's very extensive.
Right. Checkout is kind of like a game of Frogger. If you ever played that old video game, it's like you're trying to move through the checkout experience and you're going to get hit by some security provider as you're running across the road. And so, you raised it, David, like you have bot managers, you have a variety of security vendors that are protecting the site from that, all needing access to that identity. And so when you talk about identity, could you give one level deeper of like, what does identity mean in this context? Like, what does the word identity actually mean when we're talking about an agent trying to go through an e-commerce flow?
So, it could be as simple as the identity of the agent itself, like knowing that, well, not really knowing the company, the business that support the agent. That's kind of one thing that we want to know. That's a way for us to kind of verify legitimacy of the traffic. Like for example, when we see things that could be coming from MasterCard or Visa or Google, Perplexity and so on, then there's definitely legitimate business behind it. And that's kind of, at least based on where the traffic is coming from and how it was behind it, it's going to provide some level of trust. But we need to go beyond that. We need to also understand the user, something about the users that actually use the agent, because we cannot just trust the fact that because it's coming from, let's say, OpenAI, then it's all good. What if somebody figures out a way to trick ChatGPT to do some bad things? Then we need to go deeper. We need to understand the user interacting with the agent, kind of trick it to do bad things, so that then we can potentially build some detection around that. Try to validate for all traffic coming from ChatGPT, verifying that, okay, going deeper into understanding what the users who control the agents, what they are doing, and then detecting fraudulent activity and maybe going back to the intent ID, kind of detecting fraudulent intent in certain cases versus for the rest, good. Because otherwise, without going to that level of depth in terms of understanding the user behind the agent, then we could have, as a defender, the knee-jerk reaction is like, I block all ChatGPT, which would be the wrong decision here because you block like a big group of users, and that would be not satisfactory for our customers.
Yeah, absolutely, David. We've really found that agent identity and KYA is important for access, but it has an economic impact as well, especially to a merchant. And so maybe you can talk about or give a real example of how combining KYA or an agent identity in an economic context, how that actually changes the risk profile when it comes down to actually completing a checkout experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's and I'm actually going to build on David's answer. Like he gave such a great answer on the human identity and really zeroing in on bad actors, right? Like ultimately, that's what it's about. Like zero in on the bad actors and block them, right? And with agents now, you actually end up in this place where right off the bat you have like three forms of identity. There's the human principal, there's the agent platform. So, like David said, Visa or MasterCard or OpenAI or what have you. And then there's the agent itself, which is a software process that is like running and actually doing the things that the human wanted, right? And software can have bugs, and LLMs can make different decisions for the exact same input. It's all probabilistic. And to David's point, like, you don't want to block indiscriminately and just say, oh my God, I'm getting hammered by this one agent, but I can't distinguish it. Like someone is hammering me. And you end up turning off all traffic from a particular platform. And I think that's where the trust begins. When you identify, like, is it a particular human okay, so then block just that. Is it a particular agent that seems to have gone rogue? Just block that. Worst case scenario, yeah, it is like the whole platform. Something is seriously off. You can block that, right? And I think being able to really target what you allow and what you block, that's what this identity is about. And that's what then builds the trust for, I think, for the bot management platforms and firewall platforms like Akamai, and then also for like the fraud solutions like Forder and others that we also work with, where they have these insights, and so they can be very surgical. And that goes back to the economic point, which is, as a merchant, if you use a blunt object to just block all traffic, you could, very quickly stop all checkout, and you take a serious financial hit on that, versus being surgical and being able to really identify the bad actors, block just those, and then let everyone else in through. Your delta is very, very low, and you can be very specific with your actions. And having this identity in a programmatic way, you can automate even this, really help manage these operations as well, where it's not too much overhead to do this.
So we've talked about agencying access to a variety of interfaces, whether that is the alphabet soup of the emerging protocols or websites, and then within even websites, the various security providers that need to be able to interpret and digest and make decisioning off the identity that's passed through with these KYA tokens. So there's a lot of players that have to be involved here. To me, that seems like an excellent reason why any kind of identity standard here needs to be open and accessible and not just owned by a single player. And so I'll open up to David and Ankit. Like, does open win here? Or does this lend itself more to a closed solution of maybe point-to-point APIs?
It's for sure for us. When it comes to implementing those protocols, we don't want to implement like many protocols. We want a protocol that can potentially work with many providers, like KYA as a standard makes sense. But like if we have, let's say, so Skyfire came up with KYA, but now if we have another startup that come up with their own version of KYA, that's additional implementation that we have to do on our end at the bot management level, or even other fraud vendors, to be able to extract those tokens, validate them, and this sort of thing. It's going to be like different quirks to every single solution. That's complicated, and for us, it's better to have like an open standard that we can whoever ends up being the company who wants to federate all these AI identities. For us, it doesn't really matter. Then all we will see is like now we get a token, and we have the same consistent way to validate that token, extract different claims so that we can extract the information we need for detection, not only for bot detection, but also for fraud detection. So yeah, it's key for us to have something that's open and not closed and very specific for one vendor to another.
Yeah, and I would take that to like just from like an agent platform or merchant platform as well, right? Like having an open internet and agents like humans can navigate to any website, buy from anywhere, and you want your agents to be able to do that as well. But then having like closed protocols or like single gatekeepers, things like that, what you end up with is that you end up in these curated scenarios where your agents can only do so much because your agent platform wasn't able to make a deal with every single recipient, or the recipient wasn't able to make a deal with every single buyer. You don't want a situation like that where then what your agents do is either limited or is suspect. Like the consumer that's using your agent is like, did this agent really look at everything that I could potentially get? Every kind of particular product I could get, or is it just giving me access to what it has access to? And so I think with agentic, we have this opportunity to really re-architect the internet. And I won't say re-architect, but just make it so that agents can really do everything that a human can do, because that's what agency is about, right? Like if a human can do something and an agent is not able to, like right from the start, you're creating this dichotomy where the agent's results will be suspect. And ultimately, when we say good and bad agents, that's kind of what it is, right? Like if the agent does what the human expected or the human would have done, then the agent is probably right. And if the agent didn't do what the human would have done, then the agent is probably wrong. And not having access to data sources or websites or vendors or products is kind of the foundation of that, right? Like you limit that choice, and then now the agent is almost guaranteed not going to be able to do what you wanted it to do.
Absolutely. So big agreement from my side in terms of open wins, and open will win here. I think it makes sense from a business case. I also think it makes sense from as a steward of the internet. You want to maintain this openness and this ability of exchange of information. And I do get concerned if the world goes towards more of these bespoke API-based connections where there are deals in order to get access, that you kind of break down the beauty of the internet and it becomes more of this intranet of close point-to-point solutions. And so a big thing that we've done at Skyfire is from day one, we've had a commitment to open, to make sure that we are not the only ones issuing this token, that anybody can be involved in this, because that's how you can actually get adoption and that's how you keep the internet open. So with that,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead,
actually,
David.
just to add that quickly, and I'm also, I'm always thinking of it from a point of view of a CDN, but also if we think of it of a point of view of a merchant who don't necessarily use a CDN, then that's a big overhead for them to like be able to support like this protocol, that protocol, and then having this diversity is a lot of work, a lot of engineering. Every single, yeah, I mean it's a lot of work, so it's not very scalable in a way.
So let's do that. Let's put on our CTO of a large merchant hat right now and talk about like what's actually going on here. So let's map somewhat of like the stack of these emerging protocols. So ACP, AP2, A2A, 402, OCA, and ACK are the few that come to mind right now. OnKit, if we can at a high level, like what are these things? Is there differentiation between them? Are they interoperable? How does this apply to like a website? Like, can you map the protocol stack at a high level?
Yeah. So, and this is the funny thing, like you look at these protocols in detail and they all come down to the same kind of key concepts where, you want two things. You want discoverability and you want the ability to, I'll say checkout, but any kind of transaction, right? Like any kind of request response kind of transaction might be paid, might not be paid. And so at a core layer, and this is one of the things we've designed, Skyfire and also the KYA protocol for, is that the concepts remain the same. And no matter what kind of, interface or skin you put on it. And so when you look at some of these protocols, the devil is in the details, right? So if you look at AP2, X402, etc., that you mentioned, they all require new development from the merchants and from the agent side as well, but ultimately to achieve the same goal, which is to be able to identify yourself, discover new things, and then conduct some kind of transaction.
Awesome. Well, going down the merchant experience, I think all of us in our lines of business have merchants coming to us today right now, expressing confusion and saying, "What do I need to do here?" So, David, to your advice to the merchant CTOs out there, there's a lot of confusion. There's concerns about who owns the customer and disintermediation. What's your advice for somebody who wants to enable agentic transactions, but like doesn't even know where to start?
Yeah, so I mean the conversation it goes in different direction. I had two such conversations this week actually. It's first of all, how do I identify the agents, and then for that, obviously, as a bot management vendor, we provide a solution, and our deeper integration with KYA as well will ensure in the future that we also can not only identify the ChatGPT of the world, but also identify the more independent AI agents developer who can create different applications that will also use an agent. So that's key. That's key for the future. After that, the conversation goes around like, okay, how do I optimize my content for those platforms, just to make sure that it's easier for them to consume instead of using my web APIs? Then what about providing like dedicated content or dedicated API to serve to this AI agent that they can consume information easier. So then that's where the conversation around potentially MCP comes. You can provide like for the AI agents a kind of like toolbox or roadmap of like how to find the different APIs that matters. And then, transforming, potentially optimizing the content server. Like you don't need all that, CS style sheet or JavaScript and all this, things that you have in regular website when you serve content to an agent. They just want like the plain information they come and ask for. So the formatting of the content is also the conversation. You have some customers go way beyond where they kind of want to build their own LLM and host it. And then as a cloud provider, Akamai, we also have this discussion about like offering compute for this sort of solution so that they can potentially host their own LLM and train their own thing and build their own agent for this purpose. So that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're talking about here, but it's, it can, in general, it's like we have some customers who are very sophisticated, who really have like a very good plan. But we have customers as well. It's just like, where do I start? Like, I don't know the first thing about it, and I'm confused about like, where do I even start? What do I care? What matters? Like, do I need to only care about ChatGPT and Perplexity, or do I care about all these other LLMs that potentially, Mistral in France, for example? Like, do I need to care about those guys? And my answer to that in general is like, you don't want to limit which AI agent or AI system that your users will potentially use to access your content. So in that case, you need to potentially be open to all of them and not just like a niche, or maybe not a niche, but the big players on the market. There's a lot of education to do around that. I'm learning a lot myself based on what the answers I'm getting from customers, and kind of refining my answers based on that as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. And
so Ankit, what advice are you giving to CTOs and merchants that are saying like, what do I need to do to get started to start accepting agents?
Yeah. So it's almost like a crawl, walk, run, right? And again, it goes back to how we design KYA, is don't really make too much of an investment right away. Use your website, use your existing APIs. Actually, we've done a lot of agent development and experimentation ourselves. Like, agents are pretty good at even using open API specs and converting them to locally callable tools and using them, just like they are with MCP servers, because the logic is really the same. You convert the local tools to the remote tools to local tools. And so start with that. Use KYA to get in today, KYA Pay for the payment side if you're using APIs for payments. And then recently we started even experimenting with this concept where, and I think David alluded to this, like formatting is so important, right? Like, you can even take the next step after that, can be another little crawl, which is like recognize that this is an agent because it's identifying itself and format your web page for that. So very simple, right? Like today you have web pages that have a print button embedded in them. And when you click on that, somehow this amazing web page changes into this amazing 8.5 by 11 page ready to print, right? And a lot of extraneous stuff is missing. And that is a great next step for agents as well. Just make your website easier now that if you verify that, yes, agents are important and they are important to my business. They may not be for every business, but they are important to my business. Make your website more accessible. And then, that gives you a springboard to the next step, which is that, okay, like say agent to service or agent to agent starts becoming a thing and these protocols get more formalized and more production ready, right? Like MCP is very, very far along. My gosh, so quickly, they've come such a long way. But there's still a lot of things to work out, authorization, account creation, like hardening it for the enterprise still has a little ways to go. And I think, once it gets there, then by then you have enough like data to really say like, yes, this is a good investment. And then A2A or something else, or maybe some new protocol comes up like this. The technology is evolving so fast. And, recently I heard a podcast which was all about like even how LLMs are getting so much better. And, with the new chips that the companies are coming out with that, a lot of the things that we do today to make it easier for LLMs to be able to handle API calls and things as the LLMs get better and better with better GPUs, it's very possible that maybe you don't even need anything more than a website just because the LLM is that much better.
I'll put you in the hot seat on this one. So the CTO signs off on what David has talked about. Okay, agent accessing my website, I have visibility into the identity. I'm comfortable with that. When it comes time to actually exchanging value and allowing an agent to buy something for me, that's a bigger leap. So how much risk in there of allowing agents to actually use the checkout flow today?
Yeah. It comes back to like chargeback management and dispute management, and things like that. And that's where, what we're doing with KYA in terms of firstly providing identity of the human, the platform, and the agent itself helps a lot to be able to really surgically determine who the good actor is or who the bad actor is. The other thing is about like mandate collection and making sure that, your customer agent platforms are collecting the mandates and transferring them or delivering them to you in a safe and secure way as a merchant to know that, yes, the human has in fact given permission to open this account or to make this purchase and things. And that's the kind of stuff that interoperability that we're working with, like the fraud management solutions and the bot managers, that's all part of the KYA token or a mandate token that they can then use to reduce that risk. Or if a chargeback does happen, then they can quickly verify that, is this chargeback, did I get this request? Or this agent bought 10 products, were there 10 mandates? Things like that. So I think the building blocks are definitely in place. You start with identity and then you extend to also collecting this mandate information to make sure that the human has signed off. And with KYA tokens, the idea here is that, there are back channels and things like that to, double verify as well as time goes on.
Okay. We have talked about the growth of protocols, the growth of agentic commerce, the traffic we're seeing, and now the new tools for agents to actually complete checkouts. So I'd like to ask you guys, like, what are your predictions for agentic commerce in 2026?
Yeah, so we saw in 2025 that there's obviously a lot of things happen. We saw on our platform there's new agents that kind of we were adding into our detection and kind of being rolled out. We see a lot of more adoption and those AI agents by end users. So I expect that in 2026 this is going to continue. What I'm hoping for 2026 is a bit of a stabilization in all these different protocols that we're seeing, and maybe some consolidation, or at least a recognition that at the end of the day, it's not all about necessarily to implement every single one of them, but there's also some solution like KYA, for example, who can actually help you with kind of integrating all of this and kind of a bit of a turnkey solution for kind of getting your agentic strategy up and running. So I think we'll see potentially maybe a few more announcement of protocols being, for this or this purpose to enable agentic commerce and so on. But yeah, I'm hoping for like a bit more stabilization moving forward in 2026, and also more importantly, adoptions from the AI platform about those protocols. Because right now, it's just a bunch of protocols out in the air, but without the adoption, it's just not really going anywhere.
Awesome. And last question before we cap it here. David, in 20 seconds, could you describe what KYA is?
So KYA to me is protocols that allow us to kind of identify the agents, authenticate the agents securely and cryptographically. Is extensible to potentially even authenticate the end user behind it, but also understand its intent in a way of what is after, and then facilitate the payment or the transaction of certain items that the customer, the end user would want to purchase. So overall, an extensible protocols that kind of include some aspect of WebAuthn, some aspect of A2A, A2P, and these sort of protocols packaged in all nice and big protocols that can facilitate the whole experience and the whole workflow.
Awesome. David, thank you very much. That's a wrap. Anki, thank you very much. Thank you
Okay.
very much, man.
Thanks, David.
See you guys. Bye.